Good morning, Barbara and Marc. How are you?
Great.
Phenomenal. Thank you, Doug.
Well, thank you for taking the time to talk with me about a very important subject today, board engagement outside of the boardroom, both within the district and in the wider community. Before we get into the details today, why don't you tell me a bit about yourselves, your backgrounds, and also tell me about the Thompson School District in a nutshell.
Okay, I'll begin. I'm Barbara, and I actually taught in the district for 30 years, and then worked an additional 9 years as a literacy support, staff development. So I have a very strong passion for Thompson School District. I then worked for a little while as a consultant for a publishing company for just a few years, and then taught at the University of Northern Colorado in their reading department for a few years as well.
Is there anything you haven't done?
So there are lots of experiences I've had that I brought into being on the board.
Great.
And my name is Marc Shafer. I am the proud superintendent of the Thompson School District, and I am in my 4th year here in the district. I've actually worked in 9 school districts. I'm a Chicago native, but I will say in the 9 school districts I've worked at and for, this is the first time in my entire career that I've actually lived within the community in which I work. And further, I send my daughter to one of our high schools here in the Thompson School District. And my wife actually works in the Thompson School District as an elementary counselor. So Shafer family is all in here. We are really enjoying our time here. This is almost 30 years in public education. I have taught pretty much all grades, 5th through 12th grade. I've served as a dean of students at a high school. I've been an assistant principal and principal at a middle school. I've served as a director of middle school education and then an assistant superintendent of secondary education. Lived in 3 states. So again, I said I was a Chicago native, so I've worked in Illinois, but I spent about 10 years in Arizona. And now this is my 10th year here in Colorado. So really am enjoying my time here. Thompson School District, we have nearly 16,000 students. We serve 5 communities here in northern Colorado, so we're about an hour north of Denver. And it's namely the Loveland and Berthoud. Those are our 2 primary communities, but we also serve a little bit of Fort Collins in northern Colorado, as well as the towns of Johnstown and Windsor. We are a very proud school district. We're rich in traditions. We have about 28 schools and 2 charter schools. We employ about 2,100. So we're one of the largest employers here, certainly in Loveland and in northern Colorado. And like I said, this is a district that is rooted and anchored in rich tradition, very talented staff, and just really happy to make this my home.
Well, thank you so much for giving us that background. You've done it all too, Marc. And we do have things in common. And Barbara, I should actually seek your advice. I spent 3 years, many years ago, teaching English as a second language, actually in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and English as the official language of education. And I'm tutoring now as a volunteer or beginning a new tutoring gig. And so I could use advice and counsel on that subject, and I will certainly tap your expertise, Barbara. Now, let's talk a bit about your partnership before we get into board engagement. As I understand it, your partnership as board chair superintendent is fairly new. How many months now have you been working together in that capacity?
Almost 3.
3 months. Okay, well, you have a lot to share then. Why don't you tell us how you developed this new relationship and some of the rules of the game you've established and things like communicating with each other and so on.
Okay, I will begin with that. I actually was on the committee that hired Dr. Shafer. I was very thrilled when we finally reached our conclusion. That would have been 4 years ago. And I was fairly new on the board. Maybe I'd been on a year and had spent that time getting to know the other board members. So the process that we had in hiring him was very comfortable, but intense in what we did. And for those first 4 years, I just served as a board member, and I watched and I listened to what my other board members had to say. And there were periods of time, and Dr. Shafer knows this, because I would go in and I would say, I'm not sure I can run again, when my time was approaching that I had to run again. And then, of course, you go up and down in your feeling on how comfortable you are with things. Then it was time to decide whether I would continue in a new role on the board, and that was for president. So I took quite a while to process that and decide that, yeah, I could possibly do that. And the reason I knew I could do it was I could build on what I already had with Dr. Shafer to move us forward in a good partnership that would allow the board to continue and the district to continue to grow. So we really went through that process of confidence in myself, but also confidence in knowing that I could work with him and continue very comfortably in the role. We meet every other week to work on agenda setting, to talk about what's coming up, but we also meet on a basic one-on-one every month, where we are actually talking about upcoming sessions or events or topics that we need to be able to process and be aware of, but not necessarily have it be determined that it's coming forward, but we need to be able to process and know that it's possibly something that we need to be prepared to discuss or present. And then from there, it's almost a daily or there's emails back and forth all the time, because we really can communicate that. We'll text if necessary, just as are you home and available, so we can talk. We talk almost daily, sometimes a couple times. Sometimes it might be 3 or 4 times a week, but there are always opportunities for me to be aware of just checking in. We call them a check-in. Can I check in on how you're feeling about this? Check in on, whoa, there's a storm coming. What do you think? So these are always working hard at keeping me updated on what's happening so that I am prepared.
And I would concur. I think Barb and I have developed and cultivated a very strong working relationship. There's high trust in one another. Barb, like quite honestly, the rest of the board, allows me to handle the day-to-day kind of management features of the district. But this is a board, and I know we'll talk about it later, that really wants to be informed and involved as well. In very meaningful ways. But you know, Barb and I will, as she said, we will, it seems like we talk daily, and it's always for purpose. It's there's always something to chat about, or sometimes it's just to inform her, because I don't want any surprises. Sometimes it's just to do a temperature check. You know, I think Barb has an educator lens, you know, being kind of a lifelong career educator. And so a lot of times, you know, things that we talk about not only resonate with her, but she connects. But also being a longstanding community member, a lot of times, and again, I've only lived in the community for 4 years, Barb may be aware of some things that may be brewing in the community that I may not be aware of. And so she can share that with me. Barb is also trusted. Again, being a former teacher, a lot of teachers may reach out to her. And, you know, Barb does an excellent job wearing both hats. I mean, she's very empathic and does a great job listening, but doesn't allow anything really to influence, I think, her role as a board member and board president. She certainly is available for feedback, but will remain that that professional distance, I would say, and then not surprise me as well. She may, I think she's great with that. So it's been a great partnership. I've really enjoyed working with her, and we're still learning. Like I said, it's still 3 months in, but she and I have other we share other interests outside of just education, and like that we will frequently talk about travel, fine wine. I can say that we're not drinking right now, but yeah, but these are areas that I think we share as well. So,
well, feel free to pour a glass right now if you want. Just remain articulate at all costs.
Yes.
So 3 months in and looking forward, does either of you have any thoughts about areas of your partnership you might want to strengthen going forward? Anything you want to work on?
Wow. I can't think of an area that is of concern for me other than always wanting to make sure that he's happy here so that he stays. I just, the district oftentimes faces turmoil, and sometimes that turmoil causes anxiety. And my concern is that he's with us, and I'm sure he is, with his family embedded in the community now, which is really wonderful. I have years in the community, and so I know a lot of what's happening. So you see the rise and fall of what's going on. So just wanting him to hang in there.
And I would say
you look healthy and happy, Marc. So I assume you are hanging in there.
I would also say, with each board election comes a new composition of brand new Board of Education members. And our current board, it's a great board, but it's an eclectic board. And being able to navigate and work with 7 members in a very productive way is really important. So I think as Barb and I continue to work together, and quite honestly, we work with the rest of the school board. There's always going to be opportunities and complexities there. Individuals were elected for a reason, and they all want to dig in and do great jobs. And there's not always an alignment in thinking. I think there's an alignment in, the respect of one another and the willingness to do the work. But the thinking is sometimes divergent. And so being able to navigate that in a way that honors opinion and views is really important.
Yeah, the main event. Let's talk about the initiative you two are co-spearheading to strengthen and expand board engagement outside of the boardroom, not making governing decisions and judgments, but playing a different role, representing the board and the district, both within the district organization and then in the wider community. Why did you decide to make this a priority? What's the backstory there? What do you want to achieve? And then you can give us some examples of engagement both in the community and within the district. So who's taking this one?
I can start with. So I would say our Board of Education is really emblematic of our community. Our community is very engaged, very interested in their schools and school systems, and there are a myriad and variety of beliefs of what makes for success, and where should our attention be spent. And as members of the community, our Board of Education wants to be involved and they want to be engaged. And I would say so. Our initiative to really move the Board of Education off the dais and really provide opportunities for them to really get a front row seat, not only in terms of what's happening in our district, but also to interface and communicate with members of the community has really risen to the top. And so as a Board of Education and myself as superintendent, we have really thought long and hard and really just developed some ways, very authentic ways that we can actually get very involved, as not only involved in productive ways, but also being able to communicate with our constituents in more of two-way dialogue. As we know, really in the most traditional sense, the public can communicate with the Board of Education, obviously through email or phone calls, but twice a month we have our Board of Education meetings. And so during public comment, the community will come forward and provide one-way dialogue, because we don't engage in back and forth conversation. Right. We're polite listeners. And it's been a little bit itchy and scratchy to just listen to some of the feedback, which for the last 2 years, quite honestly, has been quite animated and full of energy and vigor. And I'll just give the example of COVID, as we know. And the mask wearing has been one of a lightning rod here in our community. Our community is truly split. I would almost say 50-50 on mask wearing. And so, as you can imagine, the feedback we've been receiving has been, all along the gamut. And it's been frustrating because there's been so much passion and energy around it, but we, as a board, board members, passively listen. They listen, and members of the community are becoming increasingly frustrated. Are you listening to us? What do you think? Do you agree with us? And so that, I would say, was part of the genesis of our thinking, like, wow, we would love to create opportunities, forums, or venues for us to really engage, because as we know, conversation is two-way. It's not, we talk, you listen. It's we talk and you respond, or at least react. And so, I share that story as kind of a springboard in terms of like where we're going with this. One of the things that the board has committed to do are these community engagement sessions. And so starting later this month, we will have facilitated discussions where members of the community can come in and engage with our Board of Education members. We'll have these facilitated by senior leadership members of my cabinet, mainly because it's tough to facilitate and engage in conversation at the same time. And so we wanted to really create a neutral playing field where members of the community could engage with board members, and board members could react and respond as well. And so we'll be holding these sessions not only here on our quote unquote home turf in the boardroom, but we'll also go out to schools. And so we'll go out to a number of our schools within our community at different times. We'll do a morning session, we'll do an evening session. The board is maybe even interested in doing a weekend session, but it's really just literally getting out into the community and holding these community engagement sessions, not only to just listen and hear what the feedback and concerns are, but truly engage and really go into some back and forth conversations.
Well, tell me a little bit, if not right now, over the course of the next few minutes, how you arrived at this decision to launch these community forums. I'd be interested. There must have been some debate, some juicy discussion. So give us a bit of the backstory, if you would.
Sure. So I think, and Barb, you can certainly extend on this. This was truly. So we when the Board of Education was elected in November, we did a retreat in December. So just 3 short weeks afterwards, and this rose right to the top. Public comment, community engagement. This was a priority of this school board, that they wanted to really get out into the community in the most authentic of ways. And so, and a lot of this was just what the genesis of all of this was really just the hour plus of public comment at each of our meetings, where there was just the frustration and the, why aren't you listening to us? And are you listening to us? And so we took the time during our retreat, we studied the topic, and then we developed strategies. So it was truly the entire Board of Education and myself really talking through what this could look like, and then strategizing. And then
what reservations were raised, if any, in that discussion? Concerns on the part of board members?
Well, I think part of, if there were reservations, it would be on the part perhaps of the people that were new to the board. They were a little uncomfortable. They had watched what had led up to before election, what had led up to these really long, at 1.3 hours of public comment during a board meeting. And we're sitting up on the dais and we're listening, but we don't respond. And the fact that they were them becoming, they meaning the public participants, were becoming a little accusatory, that we weren't responding to them. They didn't understand that that was the role we had as a board member during our public meeting, that it was a meeting and that we couldn't go back and forth with them. And so it led to our moving forward with the idea that we've got to come up with some way to meet with the community to answer those questions they were firing at us in their public comment. So the hesitation, perhaps, I think maybe a couple of the board members were a little nervous about it. Also, some of the fear of, what if I don't have the answer when the question, and they're the one in that group that's focused on that question, and being able to say, I don't have an answer for it right now, but I will find that answer or connect you to the person that can move us forward with that conversation.
That was the counsel you gave the person who
yes,
was
if
worried.
we needed
You don't have to answer every question.
No, you don't. And it was to let them know, and that they would not be alone in it, that we would never just send one school board with a group of 12 people, that there could probably be 2 of us as well as a cabinet member that would help us out. So easing that comfort perhaps was one of the pieces. Even my part, it's a little nervous. I've been on the board for 4 years, almost 5 now, and thrown into a situation where they're firing questions at us that are uncomfortable.
So what other things, you have this apparently a new initiative you're launching too. What other things have you been doing? What are practical examples of engagement, both in the district and outside?
As a board member, we are visiting schools. We followed Shafer through tours of the schools. We sign up and we each do about 8 to 12 each time we go through. And it's really been fun this winter, because we've actually been able to be there, whereas for the last year and a half, starting in March, a couple of years ago, we couldn't go into schools. And so it was really a relief to the schools and see the kids. We also are all on committees, and during those committees, we give reports. During our board meeting, we give reports to the public about what our committees are. An example would be, I'm on the 1338, which is the initiative for teacher effectiveness here in Colorado. And it involves our Teacher Education Association and the administration. So we're all kind of working together on guidelines for the teacher effectiveness with Colorado Department of Education piece. I'm also on what we call the CBOC, which is the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. And we knew when we decided to hold the election for the bond and mill, we had to be able to be accountable to the community. And so we have the CBOC committee, which goes over every minute detail of what's happening in our bond process. And so when we also have one for the mill, we have a budget one. So we have a lot of pieces that the board members are a part of, not necessarily always a voting member of, but we are a part of lots of committees that we share out back to the public during our meetings.
Do you have a committee that oversees this engagement? I mean, is there a particular committee of the board, like external affairs or something, that kind of coordinates board engagement?
A few years ago, we talked about doing individual small committees, but a couple of years ago, we decided that no, it was important for all of us to be aware of and engaged in what's happening.
Good. What other things are you doing or contemplating doing? And have you met any particular challenges as you've gone out there? One thing I was thinking of to ask you about, and then I'll shut up here, was whether you're booking board members to speak in civic associations and so on in different forms in the community. If so, tell me how that's going and what you're doing in that regard.
Sure.
And what challenges you're facing?
I would say other initiatives, Doug, that our board engages in is job shadowing. And so spending a day in a teacher's classroom, riding along with a bus driver, working in food service and serving food. Now more than ever, our employees need to feel valued because they should be valued. And we recognize that a way to do that is to spend some time walking in their shoes. And so we have developed a lot of opportunities for our board members literally to get out and just spend some time, one-on-one or in small groups with our different job categories and kind of really just experience firsthand what that looks like. And so that has been really powerful and exceptional. And, our board members are very open to that. I do, as superintendent, listening sessions with our 3 employee groups. We have our classified or licensed, as well as our administrative employee groups. And so 2-3 times a year, I hold these listening sessions, and the board joins as well. Really just to hear also firsthand about the employee experience. We know, the national economy is really tough. We're competing for our human resources, our employees. It's not just about attracting great talent here to the district, but it's retaining them. And so giving some voice and opportunity has really been powerful, and having our board join those conversations have been transformational. In terms of future opportunities and branching out a little bit, as superintendent, I speak often to, our chambers of commerce, our rotaries, our realtor associations. And traditionally, I have gone, I take my my PowerPoint, my show on the road, and I do a short overview, and then we do a Q&A. We've I think come to the conclusion that there would be value in being joined by a board member as well, to maybe co-facilitate that. I don't necessarily, superintendent often is the quote unquote face of the district, but honestly, the Board of Education provides that. They're community members, and that necessary face as well of the organization is really important. And so we see that as a future opportunity that we will look to do right away. One other opportunity, and then I'm sure Barb can point out as well. We have a very diverse community as well, and I would say when we talk about diversity, we talk about language diversity and cultural diversity and socioeconomic diversity, and also just diversity of participation. We have those members of the community that have no trouble, coming forward and sharing their views and feedback with us. We have many others that don't. And just because they're not coming forward doesn't mean that they don't have an opinion. Roughly 75% of our community, they do not send children to our schools. And so, but they're still members of our community. And our challenge has always been, how do we interface and communicate with them? How do we reach them more than just one way, dialogue like newsletters or check us out on our website? Like, we have to go out to them. We have to talk with them and tell our story. And so I would say that also is a future opportunity, something that we're continuously mindful of, and I know getting out to the community will be really impactful. But how do we better engage members of our community that do not traditionally attend our forums or participate with us? Barb?
I would add that our community has a lot of senior members in it, and that impacts the fact that they don't understand the changes in the school district. So we really do need to find a way to engage the senior population so that they understand. When he said 75% of the population don't have children in our school, that's because a lot of them are aged my age, and they just are beyond child rearing ages. And so we still have to figure out a way to engage those families, those people in what's happening in our school district. It's the only way we will be able to continue to maintain our facilities and our people.
What challenges have you had to deal with getting board members engaged more widely in the community and within the district? Any particular
Well, one of the
problems
things we
you've had
really
to
looked
solve?
at was we wanted to be sure, because some of our public participants felt that we were sitting up on the dais and none of us had kids in school. You know, they assumed that we were all of the age of the senior or whatever, and we had people up on the dais that had children in school. So we really then wanted to seek out, when it was time for our re-elections to occur, is we wanted to find people that were younger that would be a face of a good portion of our community as well. So that was a challenge, is making sure that we had not just, because oftentimes if you look at a school board, a lot of them are older people because they've retired and they have the time to participate.
Right.
And that was the perception, is we were done with our work time, and so we could be on the school board, and we wanted to change that look. We wanted to have people on the board with children, and that now adjusts our planning and our thinking, because we need to accommodate the fact that these people are still working. So it changes a little bit about how we schedule, as we want to make sure that it allows time for our younger mothers to be a part of it, or fathers.
I would also say, because our community is so diverse in perspective and position and opinion, it's really important that our community sees themselves in at least a member or two on the board. That these are elected officials, and we elected them to carry forward maybe some of our beliefs and philosophies and positions. And what the community doesn't want to see is a 7-0 board that just kind of rubber stamps and just kind of moves forward. They want to see engagement, purposeful engagement, as well as some pushing on some thinking, asking the hard questions, not necessarily voting 7-0 on everything, but getting a little messy. And I think it's a careful balance, certainly, because we have our strategic plan, and we want to certainly anchor around our values and our mission and all of that. And at the same time, we're making some really tough decisions at a time when some of the views are very polarizing, and we just want to make sure that the voices are heard and then thoughtfully discussed publicly on the dais as well.
What, so far as you can tell, how's this experience been for your colleagues on the board? Are they enjoying and finding pertinent to their work, this kind of engagement?
Well, once we set the dates, I simply sent out an email with the dates and asked them to respond with, there were 4 dates that we were asking for. And I said, I'd love to have everybody participate in as many of these as they could. And almost all of them are able to make at least 3 of the 4. So we know that the board is engaged in it, and have made, if their schedules were conflicted, they worked around that to make it work out. So I believe that they're all eager and ready to participate, and are thankful that we'll have cabinet members with us, and that we don't have to do the recording of everything. So we'll have somebody with us. So I think they're pretty well ready, and are looking forward to the opportunity to answer those questions that we've been asked over and over.
These are the community forums. Now, Marc, you touched on speaking, say Rotary, other associations, and I want to make sure I understand. Have you booked, or will you be thinking about booking board members either to join you or go solo in speaking publicly?
So these have already been set and on the calendar, and these really are all year. But this is a to be done with including board members to join me. So this isn't something that we have started yet. But quite honestly, this is a board that is not punching a clock. Like they truly want to be authentically involved and engaged in productive ways. And again, I think there's a real synergy and power of, a lot of these civic groups seeing not only the superintendent, but also a Board of Education member really standing shoulder to shoulder, definitely on message, but also able to, not that we're going to debate or anything, but just have a different perspective. Obviously, my perspective as a superintendent is not always 100% aligned with maybe a perspective of a board member, and some of that would be healthy, I think, in maybe some of these community or civic meetings as well. So long answer to a short question, Doug. Yes, it is. I am definitely planning on inviting board members to join me on some of my speaking tours.
I think it's important that it not always be just the president, because we have some people on the board that are very comfortable engaging with the community. And in those meetings, I think it would also be very helpful.
Have you thought, if you do begin booking, quote unquote, board members to speak in different forums, are you thinking about providing any special assistance, a chance to talk about the points they're going to make, for example, or providing them with audiovisual support, or even providing an opportunity for a major engagement, say the annual Chamber of Commerce meeting or something like that, to even rehearse what you're thinking about this kind of support?
Absolutely. I mean, even in, Doug, in preparation for this interview, certainly Barb and I had a conversation yesterday. We, as much as I love organic conversations and let's just roll into it, I know our board is not, some of them are not as maybe comfortable, publicly speaking, or just have had not as much experience. So helping and supporting the board members so that they also are always seen in the best light and most prepared, so it's not a gotcha. And again, in addition to my conversations with Barb almost daily, I have frequent communication with the other 6 board members as well. So if we were ever to engage, in kind of a joint presentation or what have you, we would absolutely do some planning preparation, and I would seek to hear what they see as great outcomes, and what they would feel most comfortable participating, how active of a role would they like to take. We honestly do that with most engagement. Even when we were planning our 4 community engagement sessions, we had an entire board working session, not an entire, but one of the segments of the board working session was devoted to just talking about it as a board. Logistically, what would you like to see? What does this look like? So as a collective, we were able to meaningfully discuss, kind of the format and the role that board members would play. And so they're not just spectators, they're active participants, and they should have a voice. And so as we approach our first, engagement session, community engagement session, I think there will be increased comfort because the board had an opportunity to help shape what that's going to look like.
For what it's worth, as you know, I think I've done hundreds of one-on-one interviews with board members, mainly over the years, getting ready for retreats. And actually, I can't tell you how many have told me, and these are private one-on-one conversations, how much they would welcome the opportunity to speak in different community forums, but we're apprehensive about going out there and doing it, and acquitting themselves well in that role, but looking forward to it, being very positive about it. So, which I guess wouldn't surprise you. But anyway, well, I'm feeling a little bit guilty about me taking this much of your time. I will say this, we are going to need to do a part 2 down the pike. This is an extraordinarily important subject, especially in a world that over the past 2 or 3 years has become actually, how to say, more combative, more judgmental. The rhetoric's more strident. I think you'd agree. Never has the need for reaching out been greater, and board members have to be, I think, my professional opinion, have to be at the forefront of that, speaking to their peers in the community. And so my hat's off to you, by the way, on this initiative. And we need to have a part 2 down the pike when a little more water has gone under the bridge and we have more to share. What do you think? Would you welcome a part 2?
Absolutely.
Yes, be great.
And I think our unseen audience will certainly too. So thank you so much for taking the time to tell us about your initiatives in the area of board member engagement out of the boardroom. It's been very fascinating. I appreciate the time you've committed to this. I want to thank you and wish you a great week.
Thank you.
Let's
You're
see.
welcome.
This is Monday. Things are moving so fast. I had to remind myself it's still Monday and not Wednesday. But anyway, have a wonderful, productive, satisfying week and take care.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Thank you.